Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning for Alan in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and also good evening for Lucy and Hari in Tokyo, and also good afternoon for Opshan in Azerbaijan. Thank you very much for wait, wait. Yeah. Okay. We have the speaker from Brazil Customs, and we would like to discuss about the current or the recent development in Brazil from the perspective of customs officer. Of course, we have Alan Towersey from Brazil Customs. He is currently acting as a head of enforcement in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Swandi, for the opportunity. Thank you, all of you, for your attention. It's an honor to speak to such a sort of
Yeah,
important public.
Alan, actually, it's morning in Brazil, right? I would like to make sure, have you taken any shower or a bath before you perform here?
Oh, yes, this morning. I woke up a little earlier for that.
Okay. Okay,
In
now
Brazil, we take lots of showers. It comes from our culture of living by rivers and stuff like that. So
all right.
our culture, and it's hot here.
Yeah, good to know that. All right, we have like 40 minutes presentation from Alan, and then we will open for discussion like 35 or 40 minutes. So you can raise any question, feedback, or comments on the chat box. And I would like to encourage you guys to have a good listening, and then we can get some knowledge from Brazil, especially from the perspective of Brazil customs. Okay, Alan, the time is yours. You may present yours presentation, and then we can have a discussion after your presentation.
All right. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I'll make you co-host so you can share your slide. Okay.
Just I can share my screen.
Yeah. While waiting for Alan's
Or
come.
it's easier in the file here. I don't know. I think I'll just go from.
Yeah, I would like to say hi to Afin. Afin is also an expert of IPR in Indonesia. Afif Rama, also Andu from Sorong. Ardi, also Arfian Raka, Bella Anissa. Dian from Tangerang, my colleagues. Hello, Dian. Have you enjoyed our discussion? Erickson from Banjarmasin, Fajar from Korea, Farin, Fuji, Hari, and etc. Have you got your file, Alan?
Yeah, I just have to do some privacy stuff here on my computer. Otherwise, it will not allow.
Yeah, I know. All right. Also, Made, Mr. Chan, Mr. Haris, Nabila, Nadia Rahma from Pembilahan. Okay. While waiting for Alan's presentation, you may say hi. Okay. Here it is. Recent development in Brazil from Alan Towersey. Stage is yours, Alan.
Yep. So there we go. I think I'm still getting a bit of the corner here.
Yeah.
This roughly does it. So again, thank you for all your attention. I'm really honored to speak to such an important public. I just make it clear here. I'm showing my personal opinion and not exactly my government or my institution's opinion. Of course, I won't cross certain lines, even though they may be my opinion, because I am a public officer. So I do have sort of certain lines I can't cross even in my private life. Uh, but it's my personal opinion, not my institution. Maybe in some point of the presentation, I will point out that's my institution's opinion. But I think it will be more enriching if I give you guys my own opinion. Well, first, just so you get a bit of context, who is Alan? Oh, I first graduated in economics around 2004. I studied in a very good good school here. Then for 1 year, I studied to pass a public admission test. I was thinking more of going towards the central bank because I was an economist. I did actually get, put it this way, selected for the Brazil's development bank, which is stationed in Rio, which is where I am from. Actually, I'm not from São Paulo. I am from Rio. And other interesting detail is the surname here and my name itself. It's not a very typical Brazilian name. My family is British, so that's why my English is usually a bit better than Brazilian English. So
Yeah.
So I did end up preferring, and I went on studying, and I ended up in federal revenue, which is not very common here to enter federal revenue the age I did. Luciano, of course, is also very young, but for instance, in my exam, it was a rare exam. There were 1,000 auditors entering, and there were only 5 born in my year or younger. So it's usually people who enter our position as an auditor, they have they're around their 32, 35. I was a bit of an exception in that sense. So I was very young when I entered, and I entered in duty in 2006. Around the middle of 2006, we have a boot camp of 3 months that has changed a bit in other entries, but basically in mine when it was around 3 months. I did study with Iswandi. I think that's clear. I did my MA in business in Aoyama Gakuin in Tokyo. A wonderful experience. I really recommend anyone that has such opportunity to grab it. It's a lot more than doing an MA. It's a whole life experience to live in Tokyo for a year. You can learn so much from their culture. And again, please be a bit understanding that Brazil's culture may be quite different from yours. I will be careful. I hope not to offend any of your values, and please understand my context a bit more. Since I started working in the airport of Guarulhos, which is the main passenger airport here in Brazil. It's the main hub for passengers. I worked there from 2006 to 2011. In 2011, I went to the enforcement division. I was sort of picked for the kind of work I did at the airport, and I wanted to head the operations team of the enforcement division. And I was also the number 2 already in the enforcement division. So after 1 year, I became the head of the enforcement division. And I've been in this position since 2012. Exception being exactly the year I went to AGU, I went to Tokyo, which was 2015 to the beginning of 2016. And what have I been doing of bit different in my recent career development? I've been studying and working with my team in some solutions involving programming in Python for automation of procedures. So for instance, you're going to, I don't know, do a forfeiture report in God knows who. So you just, for instance, you can type his ID code, and that will already bring all his data. So you have all the form filled with his characteristics from our database, something silly like that, but it makes life a lot easier. And we have and that can be integrated with other things which are automated in my administration. But it can go from very simple things to a lot more complex ones. One of the tools I did to study that is from EDX, which is an open university of, which if you want a certificate, you can pay for it, you can donate money to them, but a lot of courses there are free. You can learn a lot, especially in the IT area. And I recently wrote, about a year ago, I wrote we do have in Brazil, we are part of TRIPS, as everyone is part of WTO, but we don't actually have legislation for that in Brazil. What Brazil did is a very dirty trick. Instead of making its own legislation, they just copied a few articles of TRIPS and put it in decree, which is not actual legislation. It's just like bringing stuff which was in the treaty and plucking it. And it's not meant to be that way. The TRIPS itself mentions one of the things you should do is implement in your national legislation the procedures, and that was not done until today. So I wrote that. It's part of the reasoning on that, and I participated in discussions with private sector, with other parts of my organization, with other parts of the public administration, and that is currently on my secretary's table, which is the chief of my organization. So overlook in this theme, which is not Alan here, the theme is Brazil, its customs administration, and what has been going on. My main point here, and that's what I wrote here, and you understand a lot of the context of this presentation based on this. We are less than 3,000 to take care of a continent. Oh, Brazil has the 9th GDP in the world. So we are in the top 10, close to Italy, which is the 8th. That may fluctuate, of course, from year to year. Our territory is the 6th. So Brazil in size, I mentioned a continent, but Brazil is very large. We have borders with over 10 countries, land borders. For instance, that's a problem Indonesia doesn't have, Japan doesn't have, Australia doesn't have, so many countries there don't have. And when you have a border, I don't know, like Thailand, it's with a couple of countries. Here we have that issue with over 10 countries. And we still have a lot of shore. Our population is the 5th in the world, and Indonesia is precisely the 4th, the one that's right above Brazil. So at that point, Brazil and Indonesia are quite similar. And Brazil it's interesting to start understanding how our organization is. Brazil is a 3-level federation. And by 3-level federation, I mean you have the union, which involves the whole country, which has its functions of national interests and representing Brazil abroad, with the state itself functions as the sovereign state. Then you have the states which are not sovereign inside of Brazil. Okay, we have, put this way, 28, like there were states. One of them is not exactly a state, but you have 28 states in Brazil. And you have the municipal administration. So you have it down to the town level. And at the town level, just so you have an idea, we have 5,000 towns. So you have 5,000 administrations of towns, 28 of states, plus the union. For instance, the judiciary, it only goes to state, but you have town legislative and of course the administration. And regarding customs is essentially federal. Okay? So you don't have state customs or town customs, of course. So you only have customs being federal. Revenue in the other side, and we are merged with revenue, which is the next topic. Revenue, you have federal revenue, which is the institution where I work. You have state revenues and you have town revenues according to the type of tax. So just to mention, in the federal level, you have the income tax. We don't have another income tax here. You have goods, industrial products. You have contributions which go to social security. Those are handled by the union, by the federal government. You have other taxes like import and export, which are linked to customs. That's again why we are merged. So customs administration and federal revenue are merged into one organization. Okay. So this organization is composed of roughly 8,000 auditors nowadays. And now comes an interesting issue. The salary of an auditor is relatively high for a country like Brazil.
Okay.
That's close to what would be maybe even above to what a CBP officer in the US. So as auditors, we are very well paid for a country like Brazil, if you compare that to other countries. But we also have analysts, which are a bit fewer than auditors. They are 6,000. They earn about 60% of what the auditor does, and their work is put this way, to assist us auditors in our work. But they're also qualified university degree employees, and they're very, very important. Actually, in my point of view, this should be reversed or even further. You should have really a lot more analysts. We as an institution would be a lot more productive than today, but that's kind of a consensus in the administration itself. But the issue again is involves politics, and politics always gets complicated when you're going to implement something. But one point is that also helps explain that is that when you're talking about revenue, the work of an auditor today, the way it's structured in Brazil, it's very sort of lonely. So he receives a company to audit, and he basically does that all by himself. For instance, compared to my work in customs, I have to work with the logistics. I have other issues which I cannot do a procedure just by myself in enforcement. So really the help goes very handy with analysts. And we even have some third party that do stuff like handle counting the goods we seized, counting item by item. But that's again not much. So overall, these 14,000, they are all the actual staff of federal revenue, but they don't work all in customs. As I mentioned, a lot of them are in doing federal revenue specific work, like linked to the revenue activity, not to the customs activity. So we have about 2,500 actually that work in customs. Again, for a massively huge country and territory, which is already one difficulty, reasonable GDP, unfortunately not so reasonable per capita, again, because we have a lot of people to administrate. We have the fifth population of the world to administrate. And for instance, if you get enforcement, which is the area I work, we are only 350. Well, a lot of challenges. I'll point out here some advantages of being merged with federal revenue. I don't know how it's there in Indonesia, or I'll have one of you tell me, please, as soon as I finish here. We share a common infrastructure. So coming back here one slide, a benefit is there are only 2,500 in customs, but we do benefit from having a few colleagues which are, for instance, working in logistics, in human resources, IT. So we share a common structure in that. So we don't have to have people of customs worrying about that. And both customs and federal revenue activities can share their systems, for instance, their databases, their human resources procedures. If you have, for some reason, a wave of work in customs, you can like shift people from federal revenue to customs a lot easily. If they were from another institution in Brazil, you basically cannot do that. We are very strict in Brazil on to what career you belong to. So that's something I don't think is very smart about Brazil. We could be a bit more flexible. We could learn a lot more if we had some people from the police working with us sometimes, some people of ours working sometime in the police, like our teacher, Kondo Sensei. He was Yeah, he left the program. Unfortunately, I think the next year
Yeah.
I was out. Kondo Sensei, he worked for the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and he was stationed in WTO. I believe very interesting for you to have someone that understands about customs when you are going to discuss a customs related issue, like for instance a border measures international treaty or trade international treaty. So he learns from that. They learn from his experience. I find that very, very positive. And here now in Brazil, all careers are very strict. So if you enter in federal revenue, your career is basically locked to federal revenue.
By the
Uh,
way, Alan,
yes,
before you're moving forward, can you go back to the first slide about the salary? Because it's quite interesting. You say that analysts, it's in a year, right? 78,000
it's in dollars. Yes, it would be
in
that's a year. Yeah,
a
per
year,
year.
and then for analysts, 52,000 in a year. So
Yes,
if we divide it into 12 months, it's like $6,500 for auditors.
yes.
600. Wow, that's a large number. It's like 80 juta di Indonesia. It's like 80 million rupiah. Are you sure? They get a very high salary in auditors. 6,500 a
It
month.
it doesn't go a lot above that. Our career
Mhm.
is not very distributed along. Let's say if you enter already with a relatively high salary, and
Yep.
if you are chief, you don't earn much more than that. You earn like 5% more. If you are like
Okay.
me the head of the enforcement division, I earn maybe like 5-7% more than I would than a flat auditor from my division.
All right.
So
Okay.
it's not much of a stimulus for you to be a boss in my organization.
Come on. All right. Moving forward. Come on. Let's continue. Your slide.
Yes. Uh, but one point I have kind of raised. It's not expressed here, but is we do have some revenue function. So again, even more sharing this common infrastructure, for instance, the collection part. Okay, if you're already in the revenue infrastructure, that's very good. You don't have to be concerned of having your own systems. And of course, revenue is a delicate issue. Uh, Basically, no office in Brazil touches money. That's all. Everything is paid in the banking system, but you have all the systems to take care of the collection and match everything. And that's one big system. As federal revenue as an institution takes care of it. So that there's definitely an advantage on that. But they are, and I'll point out here a few inconsistencies of being merged with revenue. That would be a do not talk subject in my institution. So this is really on Alan. Okay. So since the general agreement on trade tariffs, which is a long time ago, which is 1947, taxes on international trade are each time losing their importance. Uh, Most favored nation, so forth. And in customs, you can realize this is a trend. I'm not talking about one country, another country. Some country might go the other way around. But if you see the whole world, the global picture, customs has moving towards safety and not so much towards collection in the last decades, I would say. So since 1947, because from GATT in the 90s you had the WTO and so forth. And okay, now WTO is weaker, but you're having treaties on pools of countries or bilateral treaties. So you do have some multilateral, but they're usually right pools. We had the Pacific trade, which did not go through. But for instance, we're having discussions here in Brazil as part of the South Cone here with Europe, and there's still negotiations going on. But the point is that taxation of international trade itself is being going down, and that does change a bit of the role in customs. And of course, a factor is the 9/11 event in the US did change radically their approach to, again, not exactly safety, but it was linked to anti-terrorism. But then if you get other, for instance, in the UK, you have border force. In Australia, where Swandi is, they also have customs very focused on security.
Yeah.
And you have
Australian border force.
yeah, Mikuria-san, our president
Secretary.
of secretary of
WCO.
WCO,
Yeah.
he will always sell revenue as a very important issue, especially because that's very easy to sell to politically to a developing country. And a lot, of course, of the function of WCO is to assist more developing countries. And I don't think he's wrong about that, but it's WCO will grab onto revenue as an important issue because it helps a lot sell that to a government. Look, I'm going to sell you our procedures here, a package of procedures, and together with it, there's a very good thing for you, which is your revenue will increase.
Mm.
And of course, the governor or president of the country will be very happy with that, having a bigger budget. He can do more for his population. You have a more important political role in the country. So I'm not saying revenue is not important. It is important, but as a whole, you see customs being each time more focused on safety. So even the trade facilitation agreement, it's safety. You have safe standard of measures, and so much has been moving forward in safety, and you don't see revenue advancing. In the contrary, it's regressing. Again, that's Alan's point of view. So tax administration here in Brazil now, it's moving that way. It has already moved. In the UK, it's actually still moving, but I'll get the example of the US. It's non-territorial. What do I mean by that? In the US, the way IRS is organized now already, if you are a non-profit company in California, you are quite likely to find out you're being audited by an auditor or by a team which is stationed, for instance, in Philadelphia. Why? The way they're organized now is that, I'm giving you an example, I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but they have one, let's say, put it this way, sub-headquarters in Philadelphia, which takes care of all the nonprofits. So even if you're on Hawaii, Alaska, it's only one station of theirs, one part of the organization, which is responsible for all the nonprofit. Put it this way, it's almost like tax auditing today is more like auditing an idea or virtual assets, because you're not getting there and grabbing someone's money. That's in a bank account. You're reviewing his declarations, which are in a data system, which he filed somewhere and they ended up in a data bank. You are auditing his financial transactions, which again are not a bulk of money in a bank. They are in the bank's data system. You don't have to be like you used to be and go for the paperwork, the files in the company. Tax administration has been changing a lot in that sense, which made it non-territorial. The UK started in 2015 a process like that. They still want to remain like spread out around the country. So they are concerned that they have offices spread in the country, but again, they're specialized. So you have, for instance, one office maybe on major taxpayers in a town, which takes care of all the major taxpayers in the whole country. You have another town which is far away, another side of the country, which takes care of only the small businesses. The UK was concerned with that, so they didn't get like all the public administration and lock it into one place. So they still wanted to keep it spread around, even for income sort of distribution. So they want to clog London, right? London's already clogged enough. Just imagine here in Brazil, we'll concentrate all federal revenue in São Paulo. Most businesses are here. but the town's already clogged enough. The same would be, for instance, for Tokyo, where, I mean, that's a discussion in Japan. If they're going to shift maybe the capital to another place, because Tokyo's already so clogged. So we don't want to clog the towns, and the UK was concerned with that. And this change of the UK was planned to be from 2015 to 2021. So next year, they're going to end this transition in federal revenue. Customs, for instance, I'm from the enforcement team, I cannot seize goods without being at the place. So customs is territorial. So you have to intervene physically on goods. So at least to some degree, or mostly, customs has to be territorial. You cannot seize something, take control of something in a port if you're not in the port. At some point, you cannot check a passenger if you're not right there by him, right? So at least to some point, customs is territorial. That makes the businesses different. There comes a sort of a wild prediction of mine that it may be more than a decade, it may be a few decades, but I think these organizations in Brazil are going to split. My organization here is something like that. They go crazy, but I'm quite sure that's a tendency. It's not something from one day to the next, but something like that may happen in the next few years even. So again, we're only 2,500 to take care of a continent. Only 350 on enforcement. So what do we do with that? So for instance, that does force, when you have adverse environment, for you to create solutions. And we do have this adverse environment here. Just to give an example, in the tax administration side, which does also help us in a sense, we have one of the worst tax systems in the world. If you have that business environment research where people fill in, like the country that's by far the worst in wasting time to fill in your tax obligations, Brazil is like way worse. It's not like worse, the last one on the list. It's the last one on the list, and the difference in time for the one that's not the last, the before last, it's like 10 times more time companies waste doing their paperwork for taxes in Brazil than they do in the second worst country in the world. So one thing is that all our tax receipts, like every sale, especially from company to company, from business to business, that's electronic. There's an electronic system that records all that, which helps make things a little bit less of a burden, just imagining in paper and then you're reviewing that, or the company itself getting that and putting that into a declaration. So that has gone electronic a few years ago, around 2010, that concluded. That's very singular for you to have, like, basically all relevant business transaction in a system. So it's a lot of information. And that helps a lot auditing the companies really to the detail, if what they're reporting is true. So from a difficulty, Brazil now has a very important tool. And to the customs side, and just one curious thing is remote physical inspection. So you have a few auditors, and let's say you got to a point where there's so few auditors to do a certain job. Let's say here in São Paulo, which is a big town where traffic is absolutely crazy, and you have, let's say, 5 dry ports, and you have, okay, 5 colleagues which take care of these 5 dry ports. Now, problem is these labor rights and stuff, they have to take a vacation once a year, right? In Brazil, we have 30 days leave. And what happens? Either you shift someone from somewhere else, or what we came up with It's okay. You want to be a dry port, you have to film everything that's going on. And we may request you to open a cargo and film the whole procedure. And I'll tell you, for instance, if I want you to open a package, and I'll actually check the goods from a distance.
Mm.
So I'm not there beside the container waiting for everything to unload. I'm just telling the dry port administration, like, crack open this container, bring everything out, and I want to check that box, that box, that box, that box. Open it for me. I want to see what's there. Cool. Okay. Close the container. Then I'll do my report, my work. I'll let it go. I'll review it, so forth, without having to be at the spot. For instance, yeah.
By the way, you mentioned that Brazil have 4 dry ports. Is that right, or 5?
No, I mentioned just the town of São Paulo. They're not 4. They're actually like 7. They're a lot more.
All right.
For instance, Santos Port, which is the port here close to São Paulo, it has 3 terminals.
All right.
So you'd have to have colleagues in all 3 terminals. So what happens is, instead of having colleagues in the 3 terminal, they have all the colleagues in headquarters, and maybe a very sensitive cargo, they'll go hop in the car and go to the terminal and check it themselves. But otherwise, they will stay at the headquarters, have everything be filmed, all these procedures of cracking the container open, showing the seal, and so forth. They'll ask the dry port to do that, and they'll just check everything through video. So they'll remotely do the physical inspection. And going to a second point, which is using AI in so many initiatives, such as risk management. That's one that's pretty obvious to use, because we do have our rules, put it this way, of risk management. But another thing is letting the system create its own rules based on the feedback we give it. That's basically what AI wants to do. AI wants inputs and outputs, and you to train the system. And we do have that kind of information. We have, like, this is the inputs, the declaration, the exporter, the weight, the container number, so forth. We have all sorts of pool of data, and we do have outputs, like this was cleared, this was not cleared. We have that kind of data to train a AI system. So that's one thing we use. We have developed AI to work through scanner images. So again, AI works in this logic of data, and the scanner image is data. So you can train the system and say, okay, from this image, I expect this to be bananas. And if the system can learn that, if you have enough data. That's a problem with AI, is that you can't give it a small sample and it will learn. It needs really thousands and thousands and thousands, for instance, of images for it to understand that the banana is not a box of paper. But it will eventually learn that. It will learn, for instance, something even more simple, which is if you have a cargo that has a pattern and something breaks that pattern, and you tell the system, like, this was, for instance, drugs hidden inside the container, that it can learn actually a lot easier than if it's bananas or not. So we've been using AI to scan through, for instance, we scan in Santos Port every export to Europe, which is, for instance, our main target of export of cocaine. And we do scan all our imports. So you put that through years, we have a lot of data to work the AI through. So instead of reviewing 5,000 images a day, we have the AI do that. Of course, that still goes with risk management. So even something the AI may not detect, you may like pinpoint from the risk management, and you just check the image yourself to make sure things are fine. But AI helps a lot when you have huge volumes of trade. And again, back to our context, Brazil is a big country, and we have very few officers. So we have a lot to process and very few people to do it. Another point here is automation of the due process. So give an example of that. When streaming your lot of customs declarations, for instance, they may be filed in a system or in PDF, and you can check the information. I mean, from programming, you can read a PDF and see what's written there, and you can see there's something mentioning a dry port. So the cargo arrived there. You can already, let's say, go through all your declarations there, what's arriving in the port, and split. Oh, this is for dry port. God knows what. You can manage everything through reading the documents which are presented, even documents which are not actually written. The system can scan through them, identify the characters, and see what's written in the document. So that's the kind of thing that automation of due process does. And if you already have an inconsistency, you can already prepare those documents and put them in a row. So someone from the enforcement area can already have that sort of ready for an actual files of a procedure for him to follow with forfeiture, for instance. That is being worked on through automation.
All right, Alan, before going to your last two slides.
Yep.
All right, I would like to invite one of the participant to raise any question, comment, or feedback before we finish the last two slides. Anyone? Okay, Afin. I would like to invite Afin. Where is Afin? You can unmute your microphone. All right, Afin.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, Afin.
Hello. Long time no see. Mas
Come on.
Iswandi.
You can give any feedbacks or comment to Alan presentation.
Okay. I'm interested with the Python application. Python application that you have explained in the first slide. As I know that Python is like a program like program language, right? Like PHP or another language of programming language. So do you build this system with your team, or do you build this Python application by yourself? And can you give some more explanation about this Python application? So what actually this application did with the system, and
Right.
also does this application also connecting with another application with customs or maybe with the federal tax division?
All right. Thank you, Afin. Okay, Alan. So there you go.
There are different ways to work on. Python is one programming language. I mean, there are so many others. The one in my institution we use are basically Python, but we also use JavaScript. One great advantage of Python is you have so many modules made already, which are sort of tools which are kind of pre-ready for you to work with. But what we have in the organization is, besides you being able to write something apart, a script to automate something, just apart on your computer, we have a kind of a system to integrate declaration. Again, a lot of our advances come from our own difficulties. I mentioned, for instance, the declaration of a transaction for fiscal purposes, which is kind of an invoice, a tax invoice, and it's a XML file, all complicated, full of little fields, and if you can't open it, you can't read it. So they created a sort of a framework here for you to be able to read that and put it into a kind of spreadsheet, which you can analyze, and you can select what columns you want to work in or not. Okay, that was created based on the difficulty of reading the information from, put it this way, the tax invoices. But within this frame, you have a visual script structure. You can, within it, script in JavaScript or in Python. And there you have all information which you can pull now from our data lake. So this framework, you can pull all information you want from the data lake. And you have another system, which is our file system, which is the actual procedure, right? You had like a stack of papers, now it's a stack of PDFs, and it's organized in this system. So you can just automate stuff inside this frame. And there is a tool which is again built in it, which already feeds the file system. It's where you can have the procedure. So you can do all kinds of analysis. This framework, you can pull data from outwhere. So I can, I can create a routine inside my little framework in Python. So that allows me, for instance, to search the internet for something. Let's say I'm investigating someone. I already put there, like, pull the first few entries on Google on that guy.
Okay.
Like his company address, pull me the photograph that that Google Street View has of where he says his company address is. Calculate the distance of where the owner of the responsible for the business is and the business actually is. That's a hell of an indicator of fraud. Like, how can you run a business if you're the responsible manager for it if you are 1,000 kilometers from it? That doesn't make sense. So we can detect fraud, and within investigation, that can bring so much together by running automation. And of course, different kinds of audits, different kinds of investigations will require different tools and different information. So what you can do with programming, especially, is work all this information that's somehow available, and anything that doesn't require a too profound analysis of the case, you can automate it and bring everything together. So, and Python is just a tool for that. And a good thing of Python, if you're learning from scratch, is that it's the language most used today, and it's a high-level language. So you have so many tools for it. And if you had a problem while you're working through code, you can quite easily just Google it and you find the answer.
Okay.
Because there's so many people working on it. If you get exotic language like COBOL, I don't know, you're not likely to find the solution for what you have to come with it yourself. But Python, it's quite likely that solution already exists, and it's easily available for you to copy and use.
Alan, so I think we got the point, and we have to be careful because you're gonna use the Python, and then you can check our profile on internet. By the way, we still have 10 minutes, Alan, to finish your 2 slides. So after that, we have a question and answer session. So you gotta hurry up. 10 minutes.
No, now it should go faster. Now I'm going to bring out a broader point.
Yep.
Which it's more to make us reflect on what has been going on in our environment. The first example I bring here is regarding how written communication changed. Remember, like 1947. 1947, if it was Saturday and I wanted to write Iswandi a letter, I'd get a piece of paper, I'd write it, and I pretty much couldn't do anything with it until Monday when the post office opened. Then I'd go to the post office, maybe stand in line, whatever, I'd file it there. If you go by airmail, maybe he'd receive it in 1 week's time, most likely not. Take 2 weeks' time for that written message to arrive to Swandi. If you went by C-mail, we're talking about months. Then you have, but you had a telegram quite around that time as well. But still, if it was Saturday, I'd phone them, right? They'd get the message by the end of next week. You still have to go and hand it to the person by the mail service. But then we had a hell of a revolution, which is email. Okay, I can type an email now and I just press a button. All of you guys get it instantly. But here in Brazil, and I'm pretty sure it's not different there, like email is not fast enough. Because email, usually you sit in a table and then okay, now I'm going to go through my emails. Like, we need information now, this second. And that's instant messaging. That's how fast our pace of life is now. We need information at the second things happen. That's how fast we're going. So from something that took maybe months, now we need the information now. We can't even wait until someone like sits in a table. Okay, I'm going to check my email. No, it's now. It's really fast. And what happened in the pandemic context now is that it is, in a sense, Brazil still a bit or quite stuck in the pandemic, but it definitely went through accelerating a few changes that were happening. One example is e-commerce. E-commerce was moving, but a lot of people were stuck at home and they were kind of obliged to move to e-commerce. And that's the kind of thing, once you get accustomed to, you put that tool in your life. You're not going to unlearn how to do e-commerce. So that was going to happen, but it's going to happen faster now, this change. Home office. You already had, even in my organization, in auditing, I mentioned that Philadelphia audits someone in California. So you can do that through home office. You don't even have to be at the office. So there are a lot of tasks in federal revenue that were slowly going to home office. The thing now is everyone was put in home office. So a lot of people that maybe in 5 years or 10 years were going to be home office, they're home office now. And they're quite likely not going to go back. So that was going to happen, but now, okay, it has been pushed by the pandemic. Web meetings, like people traveling all over the place to do meetings, to sell something. And they just preferred, for instance, someone that once someone sold, he preferred that be presented to him personally, even though you didn't show the good or whatever. Now that's being done in web meetings and people got accustomed to it. So maybe that was going to happen. That cut huge costs, for instance, on travel. And I doubt we're going to go back. So the pandemic has shifted even more of things we were going to advance on. I was reading an article here yesterday. In Brazil, smaller apartments are already losing market value to bigger apartments because people are understanding, okay, now I'm going to live and work at home. So I want a little more space. That's already in market. That's already a sign that people don't buy a home because of next week or next month. Pandemic's going to go away and they're going to stay home. So the change is here to stay in a lot of aspects. And in all these times, these things are changing, and now we're having some even faster changes. How much have our procedures changed in all this amount of time? So for instance, I'm talking a lot about the enforcement side here now. For instance, in criminal procedures, here we have a fact that happens, illicit, maybe arrest, and that people's taken into custody. Then you have some sort of investigation that will go to a prosecutor. Prosecutor will take the case to court. Court will begin analyzing it, months, but most likely years. Here in Brazil, I'd say in a good case, an average 2 years later, you get a sentence from the first degree. Here in Brazil, you can appeal up to 4 degrees to Supreme Court. Okay, you may be dismissed in Superior Court, whatever, you have at least 2. So you're going easily through 4 years of procedure. And damn, we've moved from months in an email, in a mail to seconds in instant messages. And our procedure is the same as 1947. Our penal code here is from 46, actually. Like, that's wrong. That's not giving the answers that society wants. Oh, but I work in clearance. I got nothing to do with that. Okay, now China is shipping billions of parcels a year. Like, can this procedure work on billions of parcels? You didn't have billions of containers shipping in billions of air cargo. Now we have billions of parcels, which are billions of different cases. We have to change our procedures to deal with that. So customs will have to review. And again, one of the effects of the pandemic is e-commerce is going to go even stronger. So now we are on billions. We may soon be seeing trillions of parcels. I'm talking about China, the one leaving one country, because they're the ones that leave your country and go to China and so forth. I'm pretty sure we are in trillions already in parcels now, and we're going to have to deal with that as customs officers. And drugs go on those parcels. And I have a canine team here. It's every time they go around the mail branch, it's 2 free seizures at least. So can we deliver due process under the same procedures we have now, which are, in Brazil's case, from 1946? Okay, I doubt. We have to review that. Okay.
Yeah, this is interesting one. All right.
Yeah. So you can tell me maybe what happened there. Now, just want to point out some lessons here in Brazil in the last years. Actually, this operation, it's operation, but it's something a lot bigger than one operation. Operation Car Wash started right before I went to AGU, around 2015, beginning of 2015, the end of 2014. I remember that because my team in the first search and seizure warrants, my team assisted because Federal Revenue worked in the investigation together with the federal police and federal prosecutors. And so Federal Revenue did participate in the search and seizure warrants in the beginning of the operation. And that was before, so I had my team dispatched to go and help in the search and seizures right before I went to AGU. So it was around 2015. And what was unraveled in this investigation, which had over 50 phases of search and seizure warrants and so forth, was one of the world's biggest corruption schemes. It involved the biggest state companies, the biggest private companies, and schemes on contract to deviate public money from these companies to people of, let's say, political or related to politically somehow to the organization in power. That one outcome of that is a former president was arrested, President Lula. He is from the left side of the politics in the country, but it's you can't say that middle right side of politics were not involved. That was a scheme that involved basically everyone in every party, at least in politics in Brazil. Just so you have an idea, Rio State, Rio is one of the states. It's a town, but also a state. Rio, of the last 5 governors Rio had, like 4 were in jail a while ago. And it was like you had the governor, then you had his number 2, the governor went to jail, then this one went in, and then he got to jail as well. And in the last years, so many went to jail from this operation. And it shaped the current elections. If someone wants me to talk on that, I will. But it has, because it was a left party, now we have an extreme right party president, which was a reaction to this operation. Like, there's so much corruption. Okay, we cannot vote for the left party or any of these, or something different arose, which was not, let's say, or middle to right or left. It was something from the extreme right side who showed up, which was really insignificant in the political scenery before that. And how did this operation succeed? A lot of it came from collaborators, which were imprisoned under precautionary arrests. So already in the beginning of the investigation, they were arrested, and then they felt themselves motivated. And we did have new legislation around 2013, where they could collaborate, where they could tell the story, tell the bigger shots in the criminal organization, tell on them, and then you could find evidence to corroborate what's being told and get convictions of the bigger shots in the criminal organization. And one point is that this political system, it fought back recently. Not very recent, but recently it's been fighting back. Because, of course, all these political parties had people arrested, in all of them. So what happens is now, and also influencing the Supreme Court, that, oh no, you can't really keep people in jail until they're finally condemned. Like being condemned by the judge in the first degree, he's not really definitely condemned, so you can't keep him in jail. And like that, the stimulus for collaborating was reduced a lot, and the operation lost its power.
Yep.
So now there's still a few investigations that came from it going on, but it's lost a lot of its power. And it's something very big in the country. It moved, changed again, completely shaped the elections. And for instance, one point is that the precautionary measure is so important. Again, we are a very fast world. And one positive outcome from that is that instead of smuggling, particularly being treated in that procedure of arrest, investigation, you start the case in court, there's defense, so forth, that takes years. There are non-prosecution agreements. So the person can already come like, okay, I did it, and the prosecutor can negotiate a relatively small punishment and get the case solved. And that gives an answer immediately to society. So that's the last point I would get to bring. It's one kind of solution for this fast-paced, changing world. That's my main point. Again, okay. I'd like to thank everyone for the attention.
Thank you, Alan. All right, Alan, can you please stop your share screen so we can see the whole audiences and participants?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, here they are. We have already 5 participants who would like to raise any question, feedback, or comments. I would like to invite Eruption. Where are you, Eruption? Please activate your microphone or unmute your microphone. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Come on, Eruption.
Thank you, Alan, for a great presentation. It's
one question. One question only.
Yes. Yes. Still introduction, not question.
Introduction, yes.
Thank you for sharing your Brazilian customs experience, also for your own opinion. I think it's quite interesting to see your own opinion also in case of Brasilia. My question is actually from the enforcement side. So why? Because now we are also developing the risk management system in Azerbaijan customs. Especially somehow we are also similar with Brasilia because we have also land borders, special borders from Iran, coming from Afghanistan. These goods are kind of threat for us right now. And we need to develop the risk management system. Before we had some futile attempts, and we were not so able, how to say, to be prompt and adequate somehow. But now customs decided to renew our risk management system, and especially my question is related to your artificial intelligence. Also, the point you mentioned about scan images. In our case right now, we have a target center. We are receiving the scanner image to the target center from the land borders, and we are analyzing. I'm just wondering, actually, it's 2 questions, but it is interrelated. First, I would like to hear if you have statistics, what are the percentage of your of the cargo exposed to the scan in Brasilia in your land borders? And the second question is, automatically do you transmit the scanned image? Actually, it is interrelated. It's fine.
Come on, Roshan.
Yeah. Do you transmit
Okay.
this scanned image automatically to your risk management system, or how do you manage this leading this scanning image in your
Thank you.
risk management system?
Thank you, Roshan. Roshan is my colleagues in Oyamagakuin, and he always raise question in any classes. Come on, I know that. Okay, Alan, come on, you answer that.
Okay, quickly. Land borders. Very exceptionally, we have scanners in land borders. Usually, they are would be in a large post, like maybe Foz do Iguaçu, which is our main let's say delicate point in our border, because you have a lot of activity at the other side. And Brazil, again, Brazil's tax system is absolutely crazy, and a lot of it is taxing on goods. So on average, I'd say a good is taxed, especially when it comes from abroad, around 40 to 50% at least. And that creates a huge difference. So we have a lot of smuggling, which is of actual regular goods, but just for the purpose of not paying tax. And Foz do Iguaçu, you have a Paraguay, which does not have those taxes. So you have a greater symmetry and a lot of stimulus for smuggling. And there is a town at the other side of Paraguay, which basically lives on smuggling things to Brazil. So there we have the kind of infrastructure with X-rays, but that's not really still linked to AI. What we do have linked to AI is in big ports, such as Santos, Paranaguá. There we do have. Now, who operates that, or who actually pays the bill? Because of the great volume of trade, in the permits to operate the port, the terminal, they are obliged to give us the images. So that's how basically we did it. We threw it to the private sector, which operates the terminal, to scan and send us the image. So the dirty trick, but again, it's in our power of allowing someone to operate international trade. In that case, the terminal, they obliged to send us the images. And that's still being done pretty much locally and then shared. It's not unified nationally yet, because that's an initiative that started in Santos. So, because Santos is the biggest port, so you had scale to do that. And that's slowly being shared with other ports yet. We haven't gone to doing actual AI on images on land borders yet.
All right. Okay, hope it's answered the question option. Thank you so much.
One thing I did not mention, which is very important, which is risk management in Santos Port, for instance. When you're targeting drugs, classic risk management does not work, because the exporter is legit, the transporter is kind of legit, the terminal is legit, but the criminal organization will just do rip on, rip off, and contaminate a legitimate export with drugs. And how can you detect that? That's not through the exporter and so forth. For instance, risk management is sometimes done in the truck driver that's taking the truck to the port. That's where it was contaminated. That's where the chain supply was fragile. So risk management has been changing a lot when you're targeting that kind of risk.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Now we're going to the second question.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, have a good day, Eruption in Azerbaijan. We're going to the second question from Dewanti, Customs of Pangkalan Bun in Borneo. Come on, Dewanti.
Okay. Thank you, Mas Iswandi, for giving me this opportunity. If I made a mistake, please correct me.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. My name is Dewanti from Pangkalan Bun Custom. Actually, I have two questions, but I would like to
only one.
choose one. Okay. Alan, from your experience as an enforcement team, how you handle with conflict of interest? I mean, if there is someone who against the law, but he or she is an important people in your country, how you handle that? Thank you.
Excuse me, the conflict of interest between enforcement and sorry, Dewanti.
Maybe, for example, if the case is someone who against the law is had a connection with political, maybe it's
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. Thank you, Dewanti.
Yeah.
So you got the point, Alan. It's like
Yes,
conflict
absolutely.
of interest. Yeah.
Thank
You
you,
may
Dewan.
answer that.
Fortunately, my institution is that doesn't happen, for instance, that much in state revenue, but in federal revenue, we are quite clear from influence, from political influence. Again, Luciana's here; she can mention the same. I've never heard from a boss of mine like, "Don't investigate this." And again, how do you, in part, get to that point? Again, this is very personal opinion, and I've learned that in a very clear way from the US. I've been in October last year in a program from the US called IVLP, International Visitor Leadership Program, very interesting program. And a point that's very clear from them is free press. Free press is very important. And for instance, if you have that kind of thing happening, that it leaks to press, and the whole public gets to know, look, this guy is using his he is a bad guy. Don't vote on him. Don't give him power. Like transparency is very important as a value in society. So fortunately, I already entered in an organization which it's still being evolving. We do have corruption inside our organization, but it's the person. It's not the organization. My organization is very clear from political influence in that sense. I've never had any trouble with that kind of issue. It's very sad that that does happen in other organizations. But we do have conflict issues. For instance, when a right holder wants us to seize something or to that kind of conflict does exist. And what I'm careful to do is think, okay, with the resources I have, and I have to take the decision which is best in the public interest, not that guy's interest. He has a legitimate interest to defend his trademark, for instance. But I have to think, like, with the resources I have, is this case relevant to protect the people? So that's an example of conflict of interest that we have to think out of our personal position and think of what's important for society.
Okay, I would like to invite Luciana from Brazil Customs also to help Alan about the conflict of interest. Would you mind, please? Luciana. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with what Alan said, that our organization, we do not have such influence until nowadays, because in Brazil, the political situation is really kind of different recently, but we have a lot of liberty to go ahead with our investigations and everything, and we do not at least I'm younger than Alan in the institution.
Of course.
I don't know about age, but in the customs, I started to work there on 2015. So I have only 5 years.
5 years.
So from my experience, we do not have any kind of influence.
All
bad
right.
influence.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you so much. All right.
In the federal police.
What's that?
The federal police have had some sort of try of the government to interfere with them, but they have the government hasn't managed yet. They're sort of trying to pressure. But then, for instance, Operation Car Wash was an example that only happened because there was no political influence against.
Yeah.
It arrested the president that was in power before, and the president that was in power at the moment was his successor. So, of the same party.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to the next question from Robi Maulana. Would you please activate your microphone? Yeah.
Okay, hello Alan, my name is Robi Maulana from Indonesian Custom. I would like to ask a question that is you don't mention yet. I want to ask about how Brazil custom handle with intangible goods like multimedia, software, etc. that going from abroad. Is that goods have that tax, and how the enforcement deal with the illegal goods? Thank you.
Wow, that's a good question, Alan. It's about intangible goods, software, multimedia, blah blah blah, about the threat tags and about the illegal goods. Okay, what's your thoughts, Alan?
Okay, for the time being, there are very exceptional cases in which somehow you will, together with the physical good, tax the intangible. For instance, you have I don't know, some device, and the device has a specific software which is in it, which sets its value to something. That full value will be taxed because it's a device. But if it's not a physical device, if it's something purely intangible, customs has no rule on taxing that. What will happen is that there are other VATs, even federal, but again, that will be specific towards the federal revenue side of it.
Mm.
So then that, from that point of view, it's going to be taxed. But today, no. Again, I was talking about our pace in society now, talking about our old procedures. Our tax procedures are pretty old. I'm not talking just about Brazil.
Mm.
This week I read about Joe Stiglitz, which is a Nobel in economics. He was talking about we have to maybe tax more property and some other issues because our tax systems now are not working. Corporations are running away to fiscal paradises and so forth, and our tax systems are not really working. That has to be reviewed. That's a world problem.
Okay, so there's no, and then we're going to the next question. Bella, would you please activate your microphone or unmute?
Thank you for the opportunity, Mas Is. And hello, Alan. I've just greeted you in the beginning of this session. Okay, I would like to ask about drug smuggling. Drug smuggling
okay.
issue, yes, that become a global issue that most of country in this world has to face. What do you think about this, and what kind of effort that we as a custom officers can give to reduce the case? Maybe we cannot fix the problem quickly, but at least what kind of effort that we can give to reduce the case? Because
All
this
right.
is the global issue, right?
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Again,
what about
our role, I understand, has been shifting each time more to safety, and that is a safety issue. And it's safety in so many aspects, not only of the individual that will overdose or whatever, but the criminal organizations which are behind that, how they profit, how that money moves, that goes directly against us. Actually, when you have criminality in the streets, that's very linked to drug dealing. And when I'm going to program, and I have my limited resources in enforcement, and I have I don't know, just a regular smuggling, which is something that's not forbidden, and I have something like drug trafficking, I'll definitely devote more resources to drug trafficking. And Brazil has, let's say, given more attention recently. That's why we are seizing drugs in the export. We didn't used to do that. And Brazil does not produce cocaine, but Brazil is used as a route from cocaine, for instance, to Europe and to Africa. But we realized how important that is in our role to protect society as a whole. I'm not talking just about Brazil society, I'm talking about world society. But the criminal, if those drugs are running through Brazil, there's someone in Brazil making a lot of money on that. And that's not legal money. That's money that goes to finance corrupt politics, to keep the scheme running. That's money that goes to other branches of criminal organizations which are involved with violence. That's parallel state. That's something which is damaging severely our society, even though the drugs are just passing through Brazil. And if it's damaging European citizens, they're still citizens as long the same as I am. Like these organizations, when you look at passengers, they recruit mules. They're people that are desperate. They get people to swallow the drugs, and if the drug busts in the guy's stomach and he dies, the criminal organization doesn't care a damn. So they don't respect people. They use people as tools.
Mm.
And I think as human beings, we should fight strongly against that.
All
That's
right.
my
Do you have
main take
any?
on that.
Do you have any special strategy dealing with these kinds of illicit drugs in Brazil? Maybe like CNT team or using any technology?
Risk management is still one of the great
Okay.
tools to identify them. Of course, you can go into the tactical, like what kind of question you ask someone
Mm.
when he's leaving the country. We do have the API information, advanced passenger information, and it's been getting better with the reservations, and we'll be able to do in airports, especially in the income, we have cameras which already do face ID, and so we get the API, we have the face ID. Again, being with Federal Revenue, we have a lot of data, so we can that guy doesn't even have data money to travel. What's he doing? So we can put that information together and do risk management, for instance, in passengers. We can get that information and see, oh, we have Federal Revenue data on not on who sent money to who, but the guy is a truck driver, which takes drugs to the port, and he has a lot of money moving in his bank account. Like, that's a hell of a target indicator, even though he's a truck driver. So that's how we have to put things together to do it and find where the criminal organization is acting.
All right. Thank you, Alan. And now I would like to invite Randy from Madiun. Would you please?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. Firstly, I would like to say that I share the same opinion about Joseph Stiglitz's approach to the taxation system,
Mhm.
as well as his book, Globalization and its Discontent. It affect how we face globalization, international trade, and also we as a customs officer. And then my question is regarding to the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence. Does Brazil Custom or Federal Revenue collaborate with other organizations to gain more data in order to make richer insight and information? Because I think it is the problem, one of the problem in Indonesia. It is a little bit hard to collaborate with other institutions or organizations. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's clear. What's your thought, Alan, about synergy or coordination with other government agencies?
We have the kind of same problem here, and that's not something of Brazil and or particularly. I'll go a bit beyond that. When I had my short question to Kunio Mikuria when he visited me, it was actually in Grips that we had the meeting with him.
Yeah.
I asked him why export information from France doesn't immediately become import information in Brazil. That's ridiculous. We are in the same world. The same good that leaves France should be the same one arriving in Brazil, and we should share that information immediately. Why don't we do that? And the question is that it's ridiculous. We don't trust ourselves. It's really ridiculous. Humanity has failed in that point, at least until now. So export from Australia should be, if it's the same cargo, it should be the import in Indonesia, and that should be linked. World system. It should be linked. So if it got checked when it's leaving Australia, you're pretty okay that that cargo is what it is because it was checked when it was leaving Australia. And the same thing, when you check what left Indonesia and you found something wrong, Australia knows, look, this guy didn't export what he said he did. That's got to do with trust within organizations. I'm mentioning countries, but the same is worth for organizations. People have to trust each other to be able to do that. So a lot of our AI is developed, basically all of it is developed inside the organization. We have had previously case working together with a university. Maybe some of what we have now has come from that in the beginning, but basically development is being done inside the organization. My team a few months ago heard from me like, this is not an option. This is something you just have to, like a generation ago, just had to move to personal computers and they had to learn that how to work with personal computers. They used to use typewriters and stuff like that. Okay, now we have to move from word processing and stuff. We have to move to programming. We have to talk to machines, and talking to machines and teaching them to do stuff. That's AI, machine learning after all. It's learn their language and learn to teach them to do stuff for us. I hope I answered your question. So, but I do think we do have to collaborate, because the same solution that works for Brazil customs is quite likely something that works for Indonesia customs and Japan customs and so forth. And the great thing about intellectual creations, and that's what me and Swandi are specialists in, is that you produce it once, and in the economics point of view, there's no marginal cost of reproducing that. So it should be available for everyone.
All right. So you're facing the same problem, right? Coordination. Okay. Last question from Fajar from Korea. Come on, Fajar. It's your time.
Okay. Just quick question, Alan. As you mentioned before, that the Brazil's border with the 10 countries, right? And I would like to ask your opinion about what is the Brazilian customs faces, the challenges that Brazilian customs faces, especially with when you have to deal with the country who has a crisis, like let's say Venezuela or the Bolivia or the Argentina, maybe. I think that maybe Brazilian customs are facing some difficulties related with that matter. Maybe you can share about those challenges and your opinion. Thank you.
Wow, interesting one. All right, Alan.
These some of the border challenges, they're a lot more linked to immigration. But always when you have, especially a land border, you have two sovereign states which have their own law order, put this way. That's part of what makes them sovereign. And you have, exactly because they are independent, you have some different characteristic from one to the other. Then people will maybe want to move and goods will want to move. As I mentioned with Paraguay, the problem is different tax systems, consequently different prices of goods. So then goods want to move. That's something that overwhelms customs. It does sometimes get a bit political. I'll give you an example. Paraguay produces 5 times the amount of cigarettes they can possibly smoke, and they don't export any legally. And that comes back to Brazil. But funnily enough, they can't produce that much tobacco. So they buy it from Brazil. So Brazil could solve that problem just taxing its exports of tobacco, but then internally, politically, that becomes an issue. Venezuela and Bolivia, they're very poor countries, but these borders, they're not very populated. So there are some issues of people crossing, but that's more of an immigration issue, and it becomes even a human rights issues when these people arrive in towns and there's no jobs for them. They're not ready to be. So Brazil has been trying to, let's say, work the humanitarian side of it. So it doesn't come too much to a customs. For instance, in the federal revenue side, we try to register these people so the government can know they're there. The government can try and move them to a town where there are jobs, where there is infrastructure from them, because these border towns, they're very small. So there's something to be done, but it doesn't involve much of the customs activity in those countries which are that kind of political crisis. For instance, you have goods being moved to assist those countries, but it doesn't impact that heavily the customs activities. It does where you have exactly the economic activities, and then there you will have impact. So the case of Paraguay, there is economic activity. So when you have a crisis, usually economic activity shuts down. So customs has an easier life. Iswandi, without your microphone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for your answer, Alan. All right, you can unmute your audio to say thank you to Alan, to Luciana, also Robshan for Azerbaijan, Customs.
Dia masa megang pancingan. Gak usah, Pak. Gak usah megang pancingan, Pak.
Waduh, sampai All right, we can have a photo session together. Give your best smile together. Yang videonya belum diaktifkan, you can activate your video. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. All right, closing statement from Alan. Would you please in 2 minutes? Come on,
All
Alan.
I can say is thank you for your attention, for your questions. They were quite interesting. It's a shame we don't have more time. I hope some of the concepts you guys sort of grasp here are useful, and they will motivate you to do more in your jobs, and it will make your life a little better.
All right, thank you so much. Luciana, would you please say something as closing statement?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. I learned a lot. And just one thing I want to add about my experience. In Brazil, I work at the AO program.
Oh,
And
yeah, okay.
something that Alan, it was Bella that asked about the drugs. And I truly believe that we can play a role as a customs in working together with the private sector and the importers and the exporters, trying to change their mind about the security risk of the supply chain.
All
Because
right.
most of them, like, they do not know what can happen in their like Alan said, the imported, the exported, they are legitimate, but the bad guys use the supply chain to rip off the drugs. So we need to change their mindset about that, and we can like try to help them to learn and to go through the security problems that we face.
Thank you,
One thing we
Luciana.
might be doing is actually threatening their AO status, say like you have to check your whole supply chain. It's really
Yes,
calling the
yes.
attention that it's not just you looking at your company, it's everyone you contract with.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
Yeah,
lose that status.
one of the things that they have, it's like procedures for the contracting parties, right? And then I'm as an AEO certificator. When I go to the companies, I know that they want to do the right thing. They just doesn't know how to do it, and then we can help them to strengthen this.
Yeah. Roshan, very short closing statement.
Thank you, Swandi. It's really great to see Brazilian experience. Despite I'm working in the trade facilitation section, but it's also good to hear about the enforcement, especially the exchange of information is quite interesting and productive. I believe that we have to share our experiences with each other in order to see most developed system in our administrations.
All right, thank you. Hari, please, short comments. Hari is studying in Grips, Tokyo. All right, come on.
Thank you very much, Senpai. Interesting perspective from Brazil. So I think that we have the same things. We have many things to do. However, our resource is limited. But I believe that if we do the best according to what we have, we can give value added in our place.
All right, thank you, Hari. And Mr. Haris from Bangka, our teacher. Haris says, any comments about this session?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I think this is very interesting because the first I have a lot of things that I know, new thing about tax actually in Brazil, and if you compare it with Indonesia, there's a lot of information that we can develop in our country. But this is so interesting for me because I have a lot of friends here, and I hope we can meet again in other season.
All right, thank you, Bang Haris. Afif Rama, any comments? Short comments? Yeah.
Thank you for the time, but it's a good opportunity for us to know about maybe the Brazil custom, about what they do in enforcement, or what the what can I say? But it's a good opportunity for me to know more about the custom outside the Indonesian. Thank you.
Thank you, Afif. And Dian Larasati from Tangerang. Any short comments? Dian? All right. Sandia Bayu, any comments, Bang Sandia? All right. Arfian Medan, I think. Okay, you can raise any comments or feedbacks to Alan, Luciana, and Robson, maybe. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Hope it's beneficial for you, right? And Taufik Ismail from Jakarta. Any short comments before we end up this session? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Iswandi. A good sharing session in this evening in Jakarta. I think you all custom officer face same problem. So it is like a good things if we can collaborate more, and also we can hear about sharing session from the other customs office. Mr. Iswandi,
Yeah.
it is a good move from you. So it give us the insight about custom outside our countries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And very last, Mafudo from Belitung, maybe. Come on.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mas Iswandi. I'd like to say thank you for Mas Iswandi and Alan and Luciana for make this Zoom meeting. I think we all learn a lot from this meeting, and please meet another one. I
All
think
right.
will be a good idea.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Alan. Once again, have a good morning. Sorry for waking you up early in the morning. And Luciana, thank you, Robshan, and Bang Haris, and all participants. And the last one, big applause to Alan. Thank you. I'm
Thank you.
Iswandi signing off. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Assalamualaikum. Selamat malam semuanya.